You have Trevor Lawrence, who's been the presumed number one pick overall at Clemson for years now. Gonna go number one to the Jacksonville Jaguars. You have Zach Wilson, who is really a Johnny-come-lately. Last year, he was really good for BYU. Before that, nobody really had him on the NFL radar. He is a guy that can be dynamic. Some have compared him to Aaron Rodgers and will likely go number two. He looks a little raw. He comes from a very notable family in Utah. In fact, his uncle is the founder of JetBlue. Then you have Mac Jones, who from a physical standpoint doesn't have an arm like Wilson, doesn't have the mobility of some of the other guys, doesn't have any of the mobility of the other guys, but is definitely a winner and put up impressive numbers in Alabama when he had a lot of weapons. But Mac Jones could go three. You have Justin Fields, who originally was one of the highly touted prospects out of high school, decided on Georgia, wasn't going to get playing time at Georgia, so transferred, went to Ohio State, and just started lighting the world on fire at Ohio State. Last year had that incredible game, the playoff game, when he injures his side, injures his hip, and just balls out, was sensational in that game. And Justin Fields has put up numbers through the air and on the ground. Fields also a really bright guy. I think he was recruited by Harvard, actually, to play in the Ivies. But Justin Fields is in the conversation, although this week or last week it was reported that he has informed teams that he suffers from epilepsy, although thankfully it looks like it subsides in his family into your 20s, and so it has not affected his football yet. And that you have Trey Lance, who is an FCS product, North Dakota State, and he really only has 1 year of film because he was a starter 2 years ago, and they went undefeated, won the national championship at FCS level, did not throw an interception. Last year only played in one game because FCS ended up playing in the spring. This, they're playing now. Only has one game, wasn't all that great against Central Arkansas, but runs like a deer, big arm. He's kind of a Colin Kaepernick-esque type of physical prospect and comes out of a program where Carson Wentz was a very productive quarterback in North Dakota State as well. So I want to ask you guys about who you are projecting. Forget what's being said, who's being projected where, what team's interested. I just want to know what you guys think about these prospects. Let us start with Trevor Lawrence. Do you believe Lawrence is everything he's cracked up to be? Surefire, Pro Bowler, franchise guy in Jacksonville, and they immediately become an interesting contender because he's there. Mraz?
I think Trevor Lawrence will be all he's cracked up to be. I question whether the Jaguars as a franchise with Urban Meyer coaching the pros will jump right into contender status this year. It might take a year or two for the franchise to really get rolling, but I think Trevor Lawrence will be immediately in Pro Bowl conversations, that kind of quarterback, where he absolutely is what we thought he was going to be.
Bogue, same with you?
Yeah, Sean's right. I mean, the concern might be Urban Meyer and the rest of the organization. I have as few concerns you can possibly have about a player coming into this NFL at this position. He's every single thing you want your quarterback to be. On top of all the football stuff, he's squeaky clean. I mean, if he's not an above-average quarterback for a long time, I would be absolutely stunned to a news.
I'm with you guys. I don't think that there's a knock on him. I don't think there's a negative you can dig up on him. And even when he said he doesn't need to manufacture motivation, I loved that. I love that it doesn't start with a, quote, chip on his shoulder. That just starts from, I love the game. I want to be great at the game. And that's what drives me. I love that. I think that Lawrence's size, his mobility, his arm strength, his productivity, his winning mentality. I mean, he's everything and more. I think in 5 years, it's guaranteed as a Pro Bowler and one of the best quarterbacks in football. I think it's guaranteed. I do not think there's any way he does not live up to the hype. Is he a Hall of Famer? Who knows? I mean, even Andrew Luck wasn't a Hall of Famer. But he's Peyton. He's Andrew Luck. He's just the guarantee of guarantees. I don't think there's any question. If I am guessing who the best quarterback out of this draft is going to be, it's no doubt it's Trevor Lawrence. Now the questions start. Let's go to Zach Wilson, BYU, with the Jets. If you're guessing Mraz 5 years from now, whether he has paid dividends and he's like, wow, Jets got a good one, or wow, he's a bust. If it has to be boom or bust, which one are you guessing?
He's a backup quarterback in the league somewhere else outside of New York. So
worse than Sam Darnold?
I don't think he's worse than Sam Darnold. I think he's probably, because I still think the jury's out on Darnold, I think he's probably in between a Darnold and a Sanchez, where you might get an early year or two where the Jets surprise and win 10 games and maybe you get into the playoffs, but ultimately it's not going to be on the back of the quarterbacks. And I actually think a lot of this has to do with situation, defensive-minded head coach, young offensive coordinator in LaFleur, but who knows, he hasn't proven anything. And coming from not enough body of work and being asked to play right away, which is what he will be doing, in a pressure-packed situation where if Sam Darnold happens to be playing well, it's going to be tough playing in New York for Zach Wilson to transition from where he's coming from in BYU. I think it gets to be too much. I think it's asking a lot of him to come in right away. My prediction is Zach Wilson ends up being a bust.
Bogues?
This might be almost like reverse recency bias, but I still can't believe that we spent time and people talked about the possibility of Zach Wilson being as good as Trevor Lawrence and putting him next to Trevor Lawrence in these conversations. That has made me kind of look maybe too much for bad things in Zach Wilson. But for whatever reason, he just, out of this quartet now, taking Trevor out of the conversation, he just seems like the one in my mind that's primed to have the biggest flame out. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen, but I even think best case scenario for the Jets, I don't know that he's going to be better than what Sam Darnold would have been for them with a full complement of offensive weapons and better coaching and better structure all around him. So I get why they are resetting this financially, but I just don't know that they're going to end up with the better quarterback long term because I just don't know that he's going to really be that good in the NFL.
I'm with you guys. I'm very concerned about Zach Wilson's long-term productivity at this level in this league. Number one, BYU did not play elite competition last year. He is kind of a one-year wonder. He splashed this year, and we don't have a huge body of work on this guy. In his biggest game of the season against Coastal, he was not effective. It's Coastal Carolina. Zach Wilson also, I think he's young. I think he is, from a mental standpoint, a maturation standpoint, kind of like Sam Darnold was coming into the league at a very early age. I think Zach Wilson is going to have to grow up real quick. And for Sam Darnold, who was not supported well with the Jets and in New York with a lot of pressure, 50 years of waiting for the next Joe Namath, it really sucked the life out of him. I think the same thing could happen. I think that Wilson does not project well long term. I don't like this pick for the Jets. I realize he's tantalizing right now, but I need more than a couple of against your body throws on a pro day for me to believe that Zach Wilson's going to be the second or first best quarterback in this draft. I've got real concerns about him. Let's go to Justin Fields now. Mraz, do you think he's boom or bust long term?
I think boom with a little bit of an asterisk. I don't know. I mean, if we're defining boom as slam dunk Hall of Famer, I don't know that I'll go there.
Not
but
Hall of Famer, but a Pro Bowler. You want to be
I think Justin
five
Fields,
best quarterbacks, one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the league, one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league would be great.
I certainly think I would lean that way more so than busting with Justin Fields. And when I watch a lot of Justin Fields play, and I've done way too much of a deep dive, admittedly, everybody wants to go with recent comparisons, that's the cute thing to do. I'm going to go a little old school, right up your alley, DA. I see a lot of Randall Cunningham and Justin Fields.
Okay.
I think he could struggle a little with the completion percentage early on. Randall Cunningham did that stepping in for Jaworski early in his career, but his innate scrambling ability, something that has completely changed in the NFL, where that's way more accepting now of the style of quarterback you need. I think he will make a lot of plays with his legs early that will buy him time to figure out the other stuff, which comes with, reading defenses and creating the passing game. And I think ultimately his arm is going to be electric and play in the NFL. I see a lot of a Randall Cunningham type career from Justin Fields.
Bogues?
That's an interesting comparison. I don't know that he's athletic as Cunningham is, but either way, he seems to me to be the safest of these 4 post Trevor Lawrence. I don't have the same fear of a Zach Wilson implosion that I do with Justin Fields. I think now the high end might not be there either. He might not get to where he is a consistent Pro Bowler in that conversation, but I don't know that he's going to flame out and make this a completely wasted pick. I like pedigree. He was supposed to be good coming into college, and he was really good in college after a great high school career. and now he should be really good in the NFL. He throws with accuracy. He's athletic enough to get away from trouble and put up big numbers over back-to-back years. We've seen his toughness. The inconsistency late, a weird Big Ten title game. The national title game was not good after the great semifinal, so I get some hesitation. But Fields, to me, is, again, the safest of these four after Trevor Lawrence.
I like him. I don't love him. I can see why you would select him in the top 3. I would understand if the Jets went with him at number 2. I don't think it's right that he seems to be slipping, and if he falls all the way to the teens and, say, the Patriots nab him, I think it's a great pick for the Patriots. I like him. I don't love him. I think that Justin Fields, for all the reasons you just kind of mentioned and laid out here, Bogues, where he had some great games, that semifinal game was an all-timer. Other big games he wasn't as good. But at every level that Justin Fields has played at, he's produced. And Fields has a natural skill set that's very, very appropriate for the modern-day NFL. He moves really well. He moves out of the pocket really well. He can create plays on the fly. When you look at Ohio State film in him, he's throwing to a lot of open spaces. Those Big Ten defenses were pretty garbage that he threw against. So that always worries me. It's a little Dwayne Haskins-ish where you're like, boy, anybody can make that throw. But I think by and large, I like Justin Fields. But again, I don't love him. I don't project him to be a perennial Pro Bowler. I just don't think it's a wasted pick. I think he's good, not great. Let's get to Mac Jones, who could be the 3rd pick overall in this draft. We'll see what the Niners do at number 3. But Mac Jones out of Alabama. Mraz?
I go back to our old friend Russell Mathis, who used to work at WFN, and he had a great tweet that he resurfaced again. He had it during the college football playoff. I wouldn't draft Mac Jones with my worst enemy's 7th-round pick. I really believe that.
So you think he's that bad?
I think Mac Jones is a complete bust. I think the excuse we've heard about Mac Jones rising up the boards is what scares me the most. When people say you draft Mac Jones because he's so smart, great head on the shoulders, and if you want to play in this NFL, you need to step in and play right away, and he'll be the most ready to play every day. But play how? Like, is he ever going to have the ceiling of being a big-time Pro Bowler just because he can read a defense quicker than some of these other young quarterbacks? That's not a reason to go take him. I am a little worried about the pot-belliness. Ben Roethlisberger, I think he needs to develop that pot belly after a little bit. That scares me a little. I think it's an alarming sign of work ethic. Heck, I know something about being out of shape and work ethic.
Do.
I just look at Mac Jones, and it feels like we're just trying to make something out of nothing based on all the weapons he played with and everything that came with it. Not based on age, but I see a lot of Chris Weinke-type NFL career in Mac Jones. And for me, that's too big of a bust to be taking that high.
Well, yeah, you can't take Chris Weinke 3rd overall in this draft. That would be a disaster. Bogues?
I hope this makes sense. I'd rather be wrong about Mac Jones in that I didn't pick him and he was a good quarterback for somebody else than picking him and him not being good for me. I'd be okay with passing on him and then 10 years later being like, oh, I could have taken Mac Jones. I'd rather be in that position than the guy that took him and he turned in to nothing. It's hard to sell me on a guy being a top 3, a top 5 pick when you can't show me what's really elite about him from an athletic standpoint. He's not super fast. He doesn't have a huge arm. He's a good college quarterback. I just don't know that he can be a good NFL quarterback, really a good NFL quarterback. So to me, he's the only one in this group that I could not see myself picking if I had one of these early picks on Thursday night.
I don't like his ceiling. I don't think he's got a high enough ceiling to take number 3 overall. I get if the Niners take him, I get the thinking, and that is we have a really good defense. We feel like we have a really good ground game. We feel like we have a really good coaching staff and a really good roster. We just need somebody that's a little bit better than Jimmy Garoppolo. And, okay, maybe you project him to be a little bit better. I think his ceiling is Derek Carr. I think if he turns into Derek Carr, which is a relatively successful NFL quarterback, but is never going to be great, and you're never going to say, don't worry, we got this because we have Mac Jones, and he's never going to turn a defense on his ear, taking him number 3 overall is crazy. And I think that's his ceiling. I just don't see Mac Jones and anything that he did being a guy that, unless the talent is great around him, elevates his peers or his team. So if he is the 10th pick overall, the 15th pick overall, if he's the guy that slides to the Patriots, so be it. Taking him number 3, I think, is a big mistake from the Niners, and I don't think they really improve that much from Jimmy Garoppolo if they end up taking Mac Jones at number 3. And finally, Trey Lance, the biggest X factor here because he's an FCS guy. and because he only really played one full great season with the Bison, but he's tantalizing because of all his physical attributes. What do you project, Mraz, boom or bust?
I think somewhere in the middle. I think you get a Ryan Tannehill type of guy where if your defense is really good, I think Ryan Tannehill is going to make a lot of plays, maybe get to a Pro Bowl or two. That's the kind of career I think Trey Lance could have, could be on a serious contender, but needs all the right pieces around him to make that work, which doesn't always happen right place, right situation. So we'll see where he ends up going. I don't think if I was a general manager, I'd have the stones to turn in the card, but I am certainly far more intrigued by Trey Lance and would run it up if that's the choice over Mac Jones or Zach Wilson.
Mraz, you say kind of like somewhere in the middle, right, with Trey Lance? It's funny because a lot of people think that he's either awesome or not. It's been very polarizing. Bogues, do you feel that strongly that he's either awesome or he's a bust?
Yeah, and it's the reverse of Mac Jones to me. I would rather be wrong about somebody else picking Mac Jones. I don't want to be wrong about passing on Trey Lance. Like I'm all in on what Trey Lance could possibly be, and I'm willing to take this gamble. Like he makes sense to me for the 49ers at number 3 because he basically gets a redshirt year. Keep Jimmy G, let Jimmy G run this year, go slow with Trey Lance. I don't need him to play day 1 as pick number 3, so I'm fine with him not being my guy until next offseason, into 2022. Like, that's the perfect scenario. So all the things that doesn't make sense about Mac Jones to me makes sense about Trey Lance. I want this gamble. I want to be the guy that takes him and has him become that top-end prospect that we think he might be.
Yeah, I really like Trey Lance. Now, I worry because the competition he played against for only a short amount of time doesn't give you a huge body of work. And I realize that is a worry, it's a concern, it's a hesitation. I totally understand that. When I watch Trey Lance, I go, that guy can be one of those game changers of the NFL. He is what the Packers falsely project Jordan Love to be. They saw Jordan Love, and they're like, okay, small school, maybe a little under the radar, but he's a big kid. He's strong. He can move really well. He's got a big arm. He's raw. He's unpolished. We can develop him. I think Trey Lance is like 3 versions better of Jordan Love, and I would be, like you, Bogues, scared to pass on him for another quarterback. If you want to take Kyle Pitts, you want to take Penei Sewell, that's one thing because you feel like those guys are rock solid. There's no worry there. But if you're taking Mac Jones or you're taking Zach Wilson or even Justin Fields over Trey Lance, you might end up looking foolish. I think there's the distinct possibility Trey Lance is the second best quarterback in this draft. I think when all is said and done, now I think it'll take him a little bit of time. I think it's going to take a little bit of time to develop, but you know, the whole FCS thing is a little overblown because Carson Wentz once was the potential MVP. Now, he has crashed and burned recently, but that has nothing to do with playing at the FCS level. That had more to do about roster, teammates, chemistry, attitude. You know, Carson Wentz mentally hasn't been great, but physically, we saw what he could do at his best. So if Trey Lance can do it at the FCS level, we can't say it's only the FCS because Carson Wentz proved that he could do it at the NFL level as well. I'm very high on Lance's potential, but it takes the right coach, the right team to untap that. The wrong coach, the wrong franchise, and he might never see the light of day in terms of success. But I would be scared to pass on that guy because he feels like, oh, in 5 years or in 3 years we could be saying, damn, how could you have not seen that type of guy ripping apart defenses? A little Lamar Jackson-ish, where it's like, what, everybody passed on Lamar Jackson? And I could see that happening with a guy of his skill set.